and welcome to another tremendous installment from very high above all the insipid and vacuous forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Monday. There are usually two things that happen every time I take one of these little trips. One of them is an excessively long layover in Denver, and the other one is that at some point during my little jaunt, wherever it is that I'm going, I find myself wishing that somehow I could transport my studio to wherever it is that I'm at. Now, of course, I realize that the whole point in taking one of these little trips is to get away from it all. And if I were to transport my studio to wherever it is that I'm at, it wouldn't exactly be a getaway, now would it? It is true that I do have a travel case replete with microphones and a miniature version of the board in the Cowboy State Politics studio, and on occasion it does find its way into our travel luggage, despite the disapproving looks from the lovely Christine. But this time around, I left it at home. And it's a good thing, too. I wouldn't have had any time to sit down and really work on anything. Not that there wasn't anything to talk about, there always is, but I was at a conference, and the whole point in being there is to listen to what other people have to say. And what I concluded is that the same issues that we talk about day in and day out on the program are not all that different than in other places in the country. It's the old adage, wherever you go, there you are. If you move somewhere else, the only thing that you've really changed is the scenery. Granted, some places are prettier than others. Certainly, there are advantages to living in Sheridan as opposed to Gillette. Not that there's anything wrong with the energy capital. It's just different. But the issues that people deal with, they're pretty much the same. Whether it's here in Wyoming or if it's in Utah, where I spent the last couple of days. One big topic of conversation was the proliferation of data centers across the Mountain West. Admittedly, I don't know a heck of a lot about how they work. Generally speaking, it's one big giant computer, and as a general rule, computers, like a whole bunch of other things, don't work very well if they're overheating. Like your car, for instance. But I really don't think you need to know the ins and outs of how the whole operation works to decide whether or not you should allow them in the state. And a big question is, does the state really have any choice anyway? Where I think we err on a lot of these things is we end up straying away from our principles. More often than not, when I do an interview with a candidate, the question of what does it actually mean to be a Republican or what does it mean to be a conservative? By the way, I think those are two different things, but that question always comes up in an interview, and I think it's a really important one. Broadly speaking, I think that question tells you how a person is going to react when new things like data centers come up. And really, I don't even think this should be all that controversial to begin with. Last time I checked, Republicans were supposed to be in favor of capitalism, not against it. Oh, I get it. Anytime some sort of new technology comes around, people are understandably skeptical. I'm sure the combustion engine raised a lot of eyebrows. No doubt, there were a lot of people that were worried that it was going to put the horse and buggy industry out of business. Eventually it did, and rightfully so, I might add. But what was the trade-off? Sure, the guy that ran the stable and the guy that drove the buggy, they were out of a job. But now, it's a major inconvenience if you don't have your own combustion engine. Even the biggest tree-hugging commie pinko has their own combustion engines probably sitting in their garage, in some cases 2 or 3. But I'm sure there was a healthy dose of skepticism about what the world would look like when everybody had their own little engine at their home. But we might be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Start with first principles, that Republicans are in favor of business, or at least we used to be. When somebody comes up with a new idea, a new invention or a service or something else that they can make money with, that ought to be a good thing. To the greatest degree possible, Government needs to stay the heck out of private business. There's nowhere in the Constitution that says that government has a role in private enterprise. Certainly, you have to have some regulations. We don't want a business that's operating purely on child labor. I think we settled that question quite a while ago. Similarly, you don't want a business that's dumping out nasty, noxious chemicals all over the place. But beyond the least restrictive regulations possible, it's not any bureaucrat's business. What happens every single time that government gets involved in private business is it picks winners and losers. It advantages one business over another one. Considering that we're talking about capitalism today, I think I should engage in a little bit of it myself. Today's program is brought to you by the Buffalo Wool Company. It's hiking weather, my friends, and whether you understand this or not, the higher you go, the colder it gets, and you want to make sure that your feet don't freeze into a giant block of ice while you're doing it. The best way to prevent that is to get a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep your feet cool and dry on the hottest of summer days, and if you happen to run into that giant snowbank at 10,000 feet, they'll keep you warm, too. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Another great big company is Morton Buildings. They are the experts in metal building construction. They've been doing it longer than anybody else around, and they do a much better job. So it doesn't really matter what type of building you're thinking about for your property, whether it's a garage or a barn dominium or a giant warehouse for your business. The two guys you need to talk to are Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. If you're running for office and you want to talk to Wyoming conservatives, this is the place to advertise your campaign. Nobody else in Wyoming has as big of a conservative audience as I do. Cowboy State Politics is the biggest conservative program in Wyoming. And if you want to win that office that you're running for, you might need some conservative votes to do that. So if you want to advertise on Cowboy State Politics, shoot me an email. The address is david@cowboystatepolitics.com. If you're buying or selling, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. And that agent is Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property, everything from small residential homes all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you're buying or selling, doesn't matter which, give Rebecca a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. One more time, 307-699-3519. And now, back to the program. Care what industry you're in, you shouldn't be forced to compete with government. In fact, I might argue that it's impossible to compete with government, except, of course, that when you get government involved, whatever it is becomes the least efficient thing ever invented. This is the biggest reason why I'm absolutely opposed to the Wyoming Business Council. It's not any bureaucrat's place to pick which business is going to prosper and which one has to survive on its own. And when you think about it, it actually goes against one of the founding principles of this country, that of equal opportunity. Everyone in this country has the equal opportunity to succeed or fail based on their own merits. It has never been easier than it is right now for anybody to start their own business. You could provide a service to somebody halfway across the globe, never meet them, and still make money doing it. That, my friends, is what this country was built on. Where we foul the system up is when we provide subsidies to what otherwise ought to be private businesses. Take windmills, for example. The only way that those are profitable is if there's a government subsidy propping it up, which by definition means that it's not profitable. If there was such a thing as a windmill company and it had to succeed or fail on its own, there's no way that it would make it. The technology does not exist that allows it to do that. And one thing's for certain, if we weren't propping them up, the skyline north of Casper wouldn't be dotted with those stupid red blinking lights. Back to data centers. If it's a purely private enterprise, and they're following all the rules, and it's a deal that was struck between two private individuals, who are we to say yes or no to it? If a guy wants to buy my property, and I sell it to him, I really don't have any say in what he does with it. It's now his private property. Period. End of discussion. Now, there is one more element to this, and that's the principle that your rights end where mine begin. And that is, you can do whatever you want with your rights and your property, but at the point at which they start affecting my rights and my property, well, then we have to come to an arrangement. And either we settle it like two neighbors, or we let a judge decide. That's just how our system works. But the guy that buys the chunk of property by your house has as many rights to do whatever he wants with that property as you do. If he wants to tear down the little house that was on the lot that he just bought and put up a big giant McMansion, he has every right to do that. And it would certainly not be fair to him to use the mechanisms of government to try to prevent his dream home or his dream business. Far too often, instead of going and having a conversation with somebody, we take the easier route and run straight to the government. We go to the city council and we try to convince them to pass an ordinance, go to the county commissioners and say, we've got to put something in the county to prevent this giant business. Not thinking, of course, that maybe if we want to do something different that our neighbors disagree with, they'll go running to the exact same people that we did. As Republicans, we ought to celebrate the opening of a new business. If it takes 200 or 300 people to set up a campus for a data center, that's a good thing because it employs 200 or 300 people, and that's a giant amount of money that's going to go into your local economy. Now, all of this providing that everybody is following the same rules, of course. And if they are, government doesn't have any place in the matter. As it relates to data centers specifically, I really don't know that much about how they operate. I mean, I understand the general principle that it really is one giant computer, but aside from what they actually do, I don't know that much. So we're going to talk to somebody that does know, and it just so happens this was the guy that was sitting right next to me on the airplane coming home. And so here in the very near future, I'm going to have him on the program so he can tell us all about this stuff. Now, I know that there are a lot of people that have some concerns, water being chief among them, but my friends, we have had liquid-cooled machines for a very long time. In fact, if you want a liquid-cooled computer, you can buy one right now. Your car is liquid-cooled. And both of those things, the computer and the car, work with what's called a closed-loop system. You put a bunch of liquid in, you put the cap on it, and it circulates the liquid and keeps whatever machine it is cool. It's pretty old technology, really. And if the data center company isn't able to acquire the water rights to cool his big giant computer, what is wrong with him paying somebody who does have the water rights so he can get the water and cool his computer? You see, all of this works on the same principle. The other big giant objection that I've heard is it's going to take way too much power to run these things. Now, it's true. They probably do require a lot of juice, but is that not what we produce in this state? Are we not the energy capital of the world? Is it not a good thing when we sell more coal or more natural gas? It wasn't that long ago when everybody was celebrating the opening of a brand new coal-fired power plant. And most people in Wyoming, at least I hope, would be doing cartwheels if we opened up a new coal mine. I think it would be a good thing if every generator at Dave Johnston Power Plant was churning away. And what if we actually sold all of that electricity in the state of Wyoming instead of exporting it out? Like I said, I think with a lot of these things, we let our emotions overload our Republican brains. But anyway, in the not very distant future, we're going to have my new friend on the program, and we're going to talk about all these things related to data centers and see if we can learn a little bit about them. And until then, my friends, remember, capitalism has created the wealthiest, most powerful, freest, most generous country that this globe has ever seen. Well, that'll do it for today's installment of Monday Reload. Have a good week, and we'll talk again on Wednesday. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is the one and only Cowboy State Politics.